You know, there are a lot of guys who see the encroachment of feminism into the corporate environment, you know, SJWism and all that bullshit. And they say to themselves, you know, we got to fight this. We got to stop this. Especially insofar as feminism is concerned. A lot of guys think that corporations and feminism should not mix. But this is just so untrue. You have to understand, see, feminism and corporations are not just each other's best friends. They are a couple. Corporations love feminism. Now, it's not obvious, okay? It's not something that you just look at them and you figure, oh yeah, they're a couple. But they are. They are. And sometimes, a lot of times, you know, the most apparently mismatched couples are the best couples because they complement each other so perfectly. And this is the case with corporatism and feminism. Large corporations, the kind of corporate environment that we have currently, of these large monopolies or oligopolies that control, you know, 80, 90% of a market in any given industry. They love feminism. And the reason is so goddamn obvious. See, what feminism does is that it encourages women to go into the workforce, right? Feminism is supposed to be about protecting women's rights and all that and advancing women's causes, right? But it actually doesn't. I mean, have you ever seen feminists marching out there demanding, you know, better daycare for working mothers? Have you ever seen that? No, of course not. Have you ever seen them protesting because they want mothers to have better rights or better prerogatives or what have you? No. You never see that. Because, see, feminism is only interested in helping women who are in the workforce. Women who are employees of corporations. Yeah, of course. Because what does feminism do? It encourages women to go into the workforce, right? It encourages women to go into the workforce. Now, what does that mean? I mean, this is, you know, economics 101, supply and demand. When you have more on offer of a good or service, what happens to that good or service? It goes down in price. Yes! See, when feminism hit the scene, specifically second wave feminism, that started really with Betty Friedan in, when was it that she published The Feminine Mystique? 1963, is it? Right. When Betty Friedan kicked off second wave feminism, which encouraged women to go into the workforce and demand equal pay for equal work. That was a big point of her efforts, right? What happened? Well, women flooded the workforce during the 60s and 70s and 80s, and up until today, of course. And since there were all these women doing these different jobs, there were more people willing to be lawyers or accountants or this, that, the other. And so the price of those professions went down. Yeah, because before, there had only been, say, 100 lawyers. Now there were 200 lawyers. And so the price naturally went down. And how can we prove this? How can I show you quite casually and definitively that what I'm saying is true? Look at those jobs that are dominated by men because women don't want to work in them. Say plumbers, say oil rig workers, yeah, say fishermen. Yeah, you know, those fishermen in Alaska and what have you, those are tough jobs. It's not only that you have to be physically strong, you have to be mentally strong. It's grungy, it's hard work. Yeah, you have different machineries that you operate that make it so that you don't actually need to be physically that strong to do the work. But it's not the kind of work that attracts women in general. Now, is it? No, it isn't. And so because of it, very few women, if any women at all, gravitate to those blue-collar professions. And so the price of those workers, of those laborers, of those blue-collar laborers, the plumber, the electrician, the oil rig worker, what have you, they are incredibly high when compared to lawyers. Because see, back in the day, back in the 1950s and earlier, the 40s, 30s, 20s, and so on, being a lawyer was very lucrative. There were male lawyers. But there were a whole host of plumbers and electricians and blue-collar workers. And so the lawyers, well, they got paid more. But with all of these women that have flooded the market, the labor market, the price went down. But not the cost of labor of plumbers, not the cost of labor of oil rig workers and what have you. And so you've got the situation we've got, right? Now, you could argue, you could say that corporations were probably against feminism because feminism wanted higher pay for women. Now, this is accurate, of course. Initially, especially in the 1960s, women who were in the same jobs as men wanted the same amount of pay. Now, corporations fought this tooth and nail for a while. But see, it's not just that the corporations and their trade associations fought this tooth and nail. No, what happened was that they started to realize that feminism brought in more women into the workforce. And so what did corporations do? They started to subsidize feminist organizations. They started to help feminist organizations. Yes, of course, because the more effective feminism was, the more women entered the workforce. And as more women entered the workforce, especially in brain power jobs, right? Jobs with high value added, right? The price of those jobs would go down. And so that's what corporations did. They encouraged feminism, and that's why corporations, individual corporations, and also trade associations have, since at least 1968, 50 years, they've been subsidizing different feminist organizations because it helps them. It's the same reason that corporations and various trade associations in, say, Silicon Valley, they all got together and they all lobby like maniacs in Washington to open the floodgates of immigration and bring in more workers from India, from China, especially H-1B visas, which are the visas for brain power jobs like software engineers and what have you. See, because these companies, they want to bring in more software engineers to drive down the price. Yeah, that's what they're doing. And if you don't believe me, hey, back in 2012, was it? There was a huge scandal with big names like George Lucas and Stephen Jobs and what's his name, the Microsoft guy, Stephen Ballmer. See, they had been colluding to keep down the price of software engineers. See, there was a big scandal, but that scandal went away because probably somebody got paid off because that's the way it works. But be that as it may, the point is, see, all of these companies, what they want to do is keep the price of labor as low as possible. And so that's why in Silicon Valley, they lobby for more immigrants from India and China to come to the United States, especially software engineers. That's why all of these companies and their trade associations spend so much money on STEM programs for women. Feminist organizations that go out there and foment STEM for girls who are in college and what have you. It's so that more women go into that workforce and therefore drive down the price of labor. But of course, this association between corporations, and feminism, of course, has had an effect on feminism. Yeah, do keep in mind, first wave feminism that was interested in getting women property rights, legal equality, and the right to vote, suffragettes and all that. Well, you see, those women wanted legal equality for women, but not just for working women. Those feminists were not interested only in working women, they were interested in all women, especially mothers. It was only with second wave feminism that the emphasis on mothers fell away from feminism. And you see? Because first wave feminism, if you just do a little bit of cursory look at the history of first wave feminism, a lot of the policies that they had in place were for the benefit of mothers, not working mothers, of just flat out mothers. But second wave feminism, and certainly third wave feminism, ignores mothers. Because they have trimmed their ideological sails in order to conform with the demands of corporations, with the demands of the corporate sponsors of so many of these feminist organizations. Why do you think abortion is such a big deal to feminists? Because it wasn't before. It wasn't before 1963. Abortion was an issue. Yes, it was. It existed as an issue, but it was relatively trivial. It was relatively unimportant in the scheme of things. It only became important because, you see, childbearing gets in the way of a woman being a good worker. Of course. Because, see, when is a woman most effective as a worker? When she's young, when she's in her 20s and 30s. And when is it most likely and most healthy for a woman to have children? When she's young, in her 20s and 30s. And so as women went into the workforce, corporations paid for feminist organizations to encourage women to go into the workforce. What do you think that these feminist organizations would start to do? They would start to encourage women to have abortions because, see, having a child, carrying that child to term and having an infant, it sucks away a woman's energy. She doesn't want to go back into the workforce. She wants to care for her child quite naturally. And so what did feminist organizations start to do? They started to encourage abortion. They turned abortion into one of their most important issues, contraception into one of their most important issues, even though it hadn't been before. Why did they do this? Because having children got in the way of women joining the workforce. I mean, it really is despicable if you think about it, huh? I mean, these feminist organizations encouraged, for all intents and purposes, the murder of countless millions of children so that corporations would have a cheaper labor market. That's what happened, okay? And you know, the bullshit that feminists throw, that it's a woman's right to choose and blah, blah, fuck off. Fuck off. Feminism encouraged women, especially second wave feminism, encouraged women to eschew a family life, eschew having children, forget about a personal life and dedicate their lives, sacrifice their lives, sacrifice their most fertile years, their youth, for the sake of a job at a corporation, a job that, because of their mere presence in that job, drove down the price for everyone. Huh? Oh man, what a mind fuck, huh? Yeah, you know, the funny thing is that, see, a lot of professional women, for whatever reason, sometimes they have to quit their jobs to care for somebody who's ailing in their family, right? And when this emergency passes, they've done studies, and 2/3 of those women who had to leave temporarily their career to care for some family member for whatever reason, they didn't want to go back to work. They loved it. They loved being at home taking care of their loved ones. Of course. Because that's the natural inclination of women. They don't want to be working for some fucking corporation. They want to be taking care of their own people, of their parents, of their siblings, of their spouse, of their children. That's what they want to do. That's what gives them happiness and satisfaction. It has taken a whole shit ton of fucking brainwashing by feminism, especially second wave feminism, to get women to forego the things that make them most happy. And it's all been so that corporations could make more money. You don't believe me? Fine. But just look around. Just look. Look. Look at corporations. Look at feminism. 2 peas in a pod. And so you're thinking to yourself that, oh, we got to strip away this feminism bullshit from corporations. This ain't never going to happen. Yeah. Corporations changed feminism into a useful tool. And of course, feminism, in turn, changed corporations, okay? Like any long-lasting relationship, you know, one changes the other, but it works both ways. Feminism changed corporations, and corporations are now responsive to the passing idiocy of feminism as an ideological movement. Okay? It's no accident that they have all of these rules and regulations. Corporations have all these rules and regulations about sexual encounters in the workforce, in the workplace rather, and all this stuff about sexual harassment. And they implemented all this stuff. Yeah, because see, if feminism is responsive to corporations and corporations' desires and needs, corporations are going to do the same for feminism, and they're going to go along with all this bullshit, and it's never going to end. There will never be a time where corporations, private enterprise, goes back to some pristine, non-feminist stage. No, because that stage never existed. That Eden of the past, insofar as corporations is concerned, never was true. Corporations have always loved feminism, and they always will.